Okay, let's see how this goes. This is going to be a live run through of how to play with the code editors and install. So I'm certain I'll run into a few gotchas and maybe a few troubles, and hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. I want to talk to you about code editors. Now, this is a really personal subject. Pretty much if you have any background in coding or programming, you have your preference. Basically, the right code editor is the one that you want to use. But for those of us that are starting out, what I find is there's so many different choices. It's very difficult to figure out, where do I start? What do I look for? So this is to kind of help people navigate the waters. These are some of the features that I find that have been quite helpful for me. And I've also seen Nano seems to be the go-to, and especially that, I'm doing remote development in a terminal. Nano is the only one here that I can use a terminal for. So let's have a look at that. So I am in my Raspberry Pi here. Now I'm connected remotely using my Windows system. If you don't know how to do that, I have another video. You can go have a look at that one. So when I'm here, I can actually just type in Nano, and you can see this is the Nano editor. Very simple, very basic. So for those of you that are familiar, I'm going to use a Python, for example. I'm going to import sys. Maybe I'll put in a main function. How about I do that right and put a def in front? So you can see one thing very quickly is everything has the same color. Everything kind of looks the same. I'm going to print something out here. So you can notice it doesn't even really tab anything for me. It'd be nice to throw a tab in. This is using a very basic editor. So anyway, there you have it. So really, I mean, this is bare bones. But yeah, I'm getting absolutely no help at all. In the modern editors, it will start complaining at you, and as you're typing, it will just kind of give you friendly reminders. Hey, put a colon here, put a def there, and then I can run my main function. I don't know. You think it's going to work? It might. So down at the bottom, you can see this. This is why I don't mind Nano, even though it is extremely basic, but it gives me an insight here. This is the control. So Control O will allow me to write out the file name. This would be just test.py, and I can type that in and enter. So it tells me, okay, I wrote 9 lines. Yeah, so that looks pretty good. Why don't I Control X out of it? So let's see what we got for test here. So, okay, well, obviously I've ran into a syntax error. You can have a peek at it. For those of you that have any idea what I'm doing here for Python, I'm using an assignment, the one equal sign all by itself. What it's trying to do is it's trying to take this object main and put it into name. Well, it's not what I'm trying to do. It's an if statement. I want to compare the two. Okay, so I got to go back and do that. So you can see I'm really not getting a whole lot of help on this one. There is, I'll have a quick look here. If you go to the documentation, there is how to enable syntax highlighting in a Nano editor. And so they have some instructions here. And so there's an instruction that you can take, and you can, you have some pre-made files that you can grab and then change things. So you at least get some color coding. So if that's something that you want to use, by all means, but you might want to have something a little bit, a little nicer. We go to okay, this is an editor that I came across, and I was actually quite impressed with it. Just only because it's a text editor that I can use in the terminal. So I can either download it. In my case, that's not going to work so great, but what I can do is I can grab this here and copy this curl. In fact, I probably don't even have the ability. Ooh, everything's moving. Here's a quick little trick. If you click up on this top left hand and I can hit edit, I can actually grab and paste things into my terminal. That's one of those things I discovered, and I said, wow, that would save me a whole lot of typing. So there we go. I can, you can see it's going through its paces, and we'll download this micro. So micro is a little bigger than nano, obviously, but if I were to go micro test, get the right symbol here, test.py. Oh, I need to run it. There. So now you can see we've got some colors in here. We've got, you can see my import statement is now different than the system, my def. And so it helps things get very readable. When you have a lot of words, you end up with a lot of noise. And as I'm typing, one of the things here I want to look at, I can actually use some of the Windows quick keystrokes that I'm used to. For example, if I want to save, I can just hit Control S, and you can see down on the bottom, okay, it's saved. So that's really quite a nice feature. You know, the Control C, Control V. You know, so I can do a lot of those kinds of things to grab and move things around. So you notice here, actually, there's a little caret, and so it's actually starting to spit up some errors. So it has a form of linting or a pi flakes. I'm not sure exactly what engine that they're using for this thing. It's pretty new for me, but it's telling me there's a problem here. And so this is what I quite like about this editor. Whereas before I had to go and run it through Python, and then Python spit up and said, no, something wrong. This one here, it highlights that, have a look at this line, something is not going to work. So there, and then I can go, I just hit Control S and save the file. And so that highlighting shows up automatically, but it doesn't go away until I save it. And so now you can see, hey, you know, that error went away. So that's pretty cool. So I can go Control X was a cut line. That wasn't quite what I was looking for. No. Control V to throw it back in. So Alt and G is your bindings. So if you have a look down here, if you get lost, it's kind of nice. At least I'm one of those kind of people that I quite enjoy having the menus. And so if I'm lost, at least I got something I can look at. So Alt G, that'll tell me. You know, so I have, you know, Control Q is how I exit. Control X is not. So anyway, I guess that's why the reason I like kind of sticking with one editor, because then you don't get confused as you're switching back and forth. So I can go save this, and then so you can see I've saved the test, and I can go quit. Oop, I don't want that one. I'm just going to go to Python test.py. There. So now everything really kind of showed up. So anyway, that's a quick little introduction to nano and micro. Now, what about Vim? What about Emacs? I know that some people are pretty hardcore, and they are wonderful, amazing editors if you know how to use them. What I find interesting here actually is they haven't even installed Vim or Emacs onto the Raspberry Pi. I guess it was one of those, you know, this is a beginner board. There actually is a VI, amazingly enough. And this is apparently it's the really light version of VI. But if you do ever go in here and try to use it, you'll notice that how do you get out? Well, it's just Shift and then the :Q, and that will kick you back out. I'm not going to get into VI, so anyhow, that's those are the one group. Let's move on. So I'm going to go on to good editors. I used Sublime Text for a while, and I really quite enjoyed it, but it is a graphical. So in other words, I need to be running some kind of X Windows, and that is the Linux version. And so the Raspberry Pi, if you just hook up a screen to it and a keyboard, it's wonderful, because then you now have a little more familiar of an environment if you've never seen a terminal before. And so this will push me into, I really enjoyed working with the NetBeans. They had a wonderful plugin for C++ and for Python, but then all of a sudden, after version 8, Python was no longer supported, and it was exclusively a Java editor, so I ended up dropping using it. PyCharm, a wonderful editor, just trust me, it's not free, and I would recommend it, other than the fact that you have to pay for it. So Micro, you've seen, and just as an aside, PyCharm, the paid version, there is actually a free version out there. So I don't want you to be kind of thrown off. There really is a free version, and PyCharm works good on the system that you're working on, but it doesn't work remotely. In order to get the remote features, I need to buy it. So that brings me what you just saw. These are my top picks. The Eclipse browser, editor, IDE. I keep saying browser for some reason, I'm not sure why. Anyway, the Eclipse was the one that has been used for quite a long time, and it's wonderful for doing the remote development. But I've actually started using VSCode, and I got to hand it to Microsoft. They have made open source development a whole lot easier. Like, they have really attempted to reach out to the developer communities. I think for little guys like me that just wants to kind of play around, I'm looking for anything that's quite cheap or free, because I don't make a lot of money doing this kind of stuff. So that's what I have for those. So we've gone through, and I've shown you the nano, the micros. This is the installing of the remote connection. I can just go here. So what I'm going to look at for, what is this PuTTY? Well, TTY is it's a way of communicating between two computers. I mean, it's been around forever. I think it was even before FTP. But what I found interesting here was actually getting this portable. So I have a 64-bit system, so I can click on this one here. Oh, it won't let me. Okay. So I'll need authorization. Okay. With XMing, if you want their latest version, they're asking for donations, so you can get yourself a password for a small amount of money. It's really nothing. If it's something that you use all the time, definitely want to help support them. Just for the purposes of illustration, we can grab the public domain one. You can see it was released back in 2007. The software has been around for a while, so it's still quite stable. If I open up the file, I can install this onto my Windows system, and let's see, non-US keyboard support, have a US. So they've got a normal PuTTY link to SSH or a portable. So yeah, we can just go next. There. Then we can start it. Now my firewall is going to spit up saying, hey, you know, this is not a normal thing, but because I'm on a private network, I'm going to allow access. And you can see down in my tray that I have a server. Well, how does this all work? Well, I got a server here, and it's actually going to be waiting for something to get served over to it. So what I need to do is I need to go to a file here in the etc. Let me find that. SSH. So it's an SSH config file. So if I go through here, what I'm noticing is the I'm after here is a forward X11. This is how the X server works, and what that does is it pushes the graphical system from my Raspberry Pi over to a terminal, a remote terminal. So again, a good security feature of Linux. Took me a little while to figure out what was going on. So I can save this. I will save with sudo, yes. So that's another nice feature of Micro. I would have been dead in the water with nano. So I'd have to go back and actually tell it, hey, sudo in front of it. So I kind of like having the program smart enough that they catch me when I'm trying to do something wrong. So I'll go Control Q to quit. What I'm figuring out is the X11 forwarding works pretty good between Linux to Linux, but apparently I'm going to need this other software, PuTTY, in order to work with the XMing. So what I'm going to do is go to this website here, and I will download for Windows. There we go, and just wait for the security to kick in, and I'll say yes to installing. Okay, there we go, it's installed. And I will say finish. So I'll just go to this. This is very similar to the SSH that I was using. Just now I have a graphical interface. What I am after here is just down here on the left-hand side, I have the ability here under connection SSH X11, I can enable this X11 forwarding. It seems to be for a Windows system that XMing and PuTTY are kind of hand in hand, and I need both of them in order to make this work. I'm sure if I had enough time and resources, I might be able to make it work the other direction, but it doesn't appear that the SSH, OpenSSH, has this X11 forwarding. Now, if you are using a Mac, SSH really does have forwarding, and any Linux system will have it as well. And so let me go back to the session. So it's the same as before. Under session here, I'm going to type in my username, which is pi at raspberrypi.local. And the port will always be 22, that is. And then the biggest thing is make sure this is automatically checked as the SSH. And let's see, and give this a name. Call this my Raspberry. That way I don't have to go type all this stuff in and check the boxes. I can just click save there, and so it's under here. So next time I come in here, I can just hit my Raspberry and hit load, and I'm all good. So I'll click on open. Now, this is always a good thing. It's just checking the security. There's a fingerprint or handshake between the two computers. And so it's just reminding me that, hey, this is a new system. Do you trust it? And so in my case, I'm going to say yes. enter my password. There we go. So you can see the terminal is a little bit different, but you know, same idea behind it. Okay, so you can see I've picked on a software that I know that's on the Raspberry Pi called Genie. I'll just back this off. So you can see what it's done is it's grabbed this graphic from the Raspberry Pi, and now it's running it on my Windows system. So this is, you'll notice it's not extremely performant. That's why I was talking about, you know, if you have a much heavier editor, it doesn't react extremely quickly. I'm pretty sure if you're willing to pay some money and get the more recent version, you probably get a little better performance. So anyway, this is a way that you can run graphical programs from your Pi and run them direct onto another system here. So now I can, apparently I've been typing in a different way. Import sys, def main. So anyway, there you go. You can make use of, get the right symbol here, make use of the editor, and I can go file, and I can go save as. So if you can have a look here, this is now pulled up the save, and so I've got, and apparently I'm running out of screen space here, but I can click save. So yeah, that's how to get Linux stuff operating through XMing. So what I'm going to spend some time on actually is the setting up VSCode. I found this setup was extremely easy compared to Eclipse. Eclipse is very hands-on and great if you want to control every little bit of the process and install things in the right place and know where everything goes. But that can be a little overwhelming for the beginner. So if you're running a Windows system, you will need to go up to your apps and features. And in here, there's optional features. For some reason, Windows is deciding it wants to stall out. Okay. And so what I'm after here is I want to add a feature. And up here in the search bar, I'm just going to type in SSH. Now, I've already installed the Open SSH server, so it doesn't show up here. If I go down to, here we go, Open SSH client. So it's already installed. And then there's also the server. So these are what I'm looking for. So ensure that you have these. So in my case here, I can then download. I do believe now that VSCode will actually run on the Pi as well. There's a version available for it. But I just prefer running it here on my local system and connecting over the network. So now I got it downloaded. I'm just going to open the file. So I can accept the agreement, and I'll just accept the defaults. Yeah, I'll add it to my path. So as far as IDEs go, actually, Visual Studio Code has done pretty good at keeping itself down to somewhere between 60 or 70 megabytes. I mean, that's tiny compared to Eclipse, I think, which was a couple hundred megabytes. PyCharm, that's definitely a much larger download. Mind you, that's all the libraries and all the supporting stuff that belongs to it. I mean, Java can be a very large install when you think of it, as compared to, say, a C or a Python install. But on the flip side, you know, with all that, you end up with a very large library. You don't have to go search for other third parties. I mean, they're built right in. So, so you can see now I've started up my Visual Code. So if you go over on the left-hand side, you can see that we can start adding extensions. So we can see this, have a look here. Python is the first one in the line. So we can install Python right away. And you can see C and C++. I won't install that quite yet. Python has now been installed. The other one that I want to look for here is, and this is a fairly new plugin. You'll notice here and down in this left-hand corner now is open a remote window. And so I can click on this thing. So I can go remote, connect current windows to host, or connect to host. So I'm going to try the connect. So I want to add a new SSH host. So I'm going to go SSH, and so pi at Raspberry Pi dot local. So this is just the same thing that I typed into the terminal that you saw before. And then I want to have an SSH configuration file. So these are borrowing off of what I had before, so I'm just going to try that. So it's adding my host. See if I can connect. So it's adding the remote. Again, my firewall is kicked in. I'm on a private network here, so I'm access. So okay, so now select the platform of the remote host. So it's discovering what's there. So it is a Linux system. And see, there we go. We are now getting asked for the password. So this is good news. I can now enter the password for my Pi. And other than that little hiccup I had, only because I had too many programs running, the setup of this was actually quite automatic. It was just a matter of click and point and enter in the right information into the little boxes that pop up. So you can see it's spending a bit of time here to connect and set up. This is what I really quite enjoy about Visual Studio is it does a lot of this setup automatically, and I don't really have to think about it too much. So it says here I've selected Linux. This will be stored in settings and can be changed if needed. So, okay, that's interesting. I don't need to see it again. So if you look down here in the bottom left-hand corner, I have now connected to Raspberry Pi.local SSH. So if I were to click on this icon up here, what I can start doing is creating a work folder. And so where do I want to put it? Well, let's put this here in the home Pi documents. This is a good spot to save all my files. I can hit OK. It does. It needs to ask me for the password one more time, just because now I'm giving it access to that folder. So again, it's part of the Linux security. You can see that untitled that I was trying to save. This is what I had before. I can rename this and actually give it a Pi extension. So, oh, there we go. Do you want to install recommended extensions? Let's have a look. And that's a thing as far as compared to, say, Eclipse, the debuggers and everything I had to do manually. So this thing just picks up, hey, I recognize that you're working on this. Do you want me to add this debugger? Okay, it's finished installing. I can go back to my documents. So you can see it's got this here, and I've got some highlighting. It's starting to highlight this in red. It's showing me a little squiggly line. Okay, well, it's telling me there's something wrong with this. Well, of course, I've got a function here, but there's no contents to the function, so I need to put something in here to complete the function. So when I save it, now all those little lines and errors and the red has disappeared. So as far as this is a beautiful thing with these editors is the fact that as I'm typing now, it will tell me the different errors. So anyway, this is, I can start typing in my Python here. It's saving itself into my documents. The next video, actually, the whole process of debugging after. But I'll end the video here. This is all really just about setting up the tools.